I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 9 to the Sky. So today is episode 30, and that means it's World Download Day. So if you're a supporter of any tier, be sure to get your World Download listed on the Discord in the World's Downloads channel. All you have to make sure to do is make sure your account is linked up for whatever account you potentially supported on. And I do want to say thank you guys for all of your tremendous support throughout this series and all of the series that I've done in the past. Now on to the craziness of today's episode, and I say crazy because we're going to be doing something that's not necessarily jumping right into the All the Mods Star production. No. What I plan on doing today is actually surrounding my entire base with an anti-block sphere. So instead of me using some sort of crazy resource pack to sort of give this a sort of night vibe, I'm going to be instead building my own skybox out of physical blocks. And in a recent update, we got access to these blocks, anti-blocks, which I've already utilized some of these white anti-blocks, but we also have black anti-blocks. And the cool part about anti-blocks in the first place is that they do not hold a shadow, or they do not display a shadow, which is very, very cool. And you can use this to make seamless just skyboxes. Now, the only downside to using these is, well, they don't emit light. Or do they? Because these bright versions do emit light. So these emit a light, and so they'll prevent mobs from spawning, but there is another caveat. If I am to cover the entire sky, what ends up happening is everything that is on the inside of the sphere then becomes technically darkened. And I honestly do not have a problem with that. If I make the entire skybox black, which I do plan on doing, then it will allow all of my lights to technically start to shine through. Which, us keeping it constantly day, well, that just means that my lights don't really get to show, and I did put a lot of work into placing all of these lights down. Now, another issue, of course, is making sure that my fission reactor has access to the sky, and that does mean I'm going to have a little hole in the sky, but we can actually fix that and make sure it is not super bright or anything like that on the exterior. But I think fundamentally, this whole sphere that we're going to build is going to dramatically change the look of this base. Now, you may be wondering, how exactly am I going to do that and build a huge sphere? Well, the builder is going to yet again show itself, and inside of here, I have a shape card, and this shape card is defined to a hollow sphere that is set to 183 by 183 by 183. And the reason why it is that specific number is because I played around a little bit to try and get a sphere that encapsulated the entire base here, but also prevented the clouds from showing up. So even if you have clouds enabled, you won't be able to see them. It'll actually just stop right there at the cloud level. And so the best way to see this is by inserting the card in and making sure everything is ready to go, and then showing the supports. Now, it is going to lag a little bit, but this is ultimately the size of the sphere. It is going to be wild, the actual size of this thing. And this is going to make for an amazing skybox. But notice, by the way, when this is done, how dark certain things get. And this is how it's actually going to be inside of here. So lighting is going to be very essential in making sure we have it in the appropriate spots. Now, the way that I'm going to supply all of these black illuminated anti-blocks, well, I'm going to use a crafting card inside of an ME interface. And I have the entire interface set up to supply 64 of the anti-blocks. So this should do crafts whenever this thing is ready. And of course, this is ready to be powered on. All I have to do is give it a redstone signal, and off it goes in building this thing. And it's going to be consuming and crafting all of those blocks, and it shouldn't have a problem at all doing this. I'm trying to actually locate where it has started, because I know it has, as you can see by what it's doing here. Aha, here it goes. So this is just one part, and this is how quickly it's going to build this thing, and it is going to take a while. And what this will do is the entire skybox is going to end up becoming a solid sheet of black void. Now, this is such a wild thing to watch as this giant dome gets generated. Now, eventually, if I do not like the way this ultimately looks, you can actually destroy this by making a destruction card that is essentially the exact same specs, and what it would do is it would just then break all of these blocks that have been placed down. So you can reverse this if you want. You could even break it down and replace the color down the road. But man, I'm probably going to really enjoy the fact of this being entirely black. Yeah, this is just wild. It's just wild seeing this whole thing just consume the base. And what an epic use of the anti-blocks. I'm personally really enjoying this. Oh, and by the way, this is going to cost a ton of glowstone, a ton of dye essence, because all of these require black dye and they also require white dye. 4 white dye actually, because each of these blocks get 4 white dye to make 4 of them, and then it requires 1 black dye to convert one of the white dye ones over into the black dyed version. Yeah, so it costs for each of these blocks technically 2 dyes, a white and a black one. So at this point, the base is nearly half covered. Oh, and the darkness is really starting to loom now. So I will be able to fix a ton of the dark major spots, but being able to add more lighting is going to be fantastic and make this thing really pop. This is just wild looking, watching the entire sphere encapsulate the base. Oh, this is so good. I'm so excited for this. Notice though, these areas right here are incredibly dark, but I should be able to easily light these up with a simple lantern. Now these ferro flare lanterns should be the one thing that should be able to prevent the light from kind of covering the dark areas over here. And that should be more than enough. And it should be too far away to interact with our mob farms. The only major thing that I'm concerned about is, of course, interacting with our hostile mob farm. But at this point, we really don't even need a hostile mob farm. Watching as the last part of this is completing, oh, is so satisfying. So the way this works, by the way, is it works in chunks. So this is finishing up a section that is inside of a chunk bound. And it goes from one chunk to the other working like that. And so now it should jump over here and should finish up the last bit of daylight that we can see. Oh no. Oh, it's very close to being finished. And here it goes. The last section of that chunk. It's being closed off. And we are now stuck in a permanent void with our last sliver of light left. Oh no. It has been done. We are now fully encapsulated by a giant sphere of anti-blocks. So now with all of that set up, we can really start to see all of the lighting taking place. And I have gone in and added a few more lights in here to give it that whole, I don't know, cyberpunk feel, which was the entire reason why I went with this sort of design. The floors are sort of rugged to kind of keep up with that sort of design, and also having bright neon lights. Now I still need to make sure that I have a hole in the ceiling, and this is where I think I'm going to have to change this up a little bit and probably extend up with these anti-blocks. But this is the sky, by the way, and the entire sphere. Oh boy, yes. So that does mean we also need to move our full-time daytime setup up above the sphere. So back up top, I just have my manipulator set up with my redstone control to trigger sunrise and make sure that the detector is shifted into its inverse setting. Now, finding the hole to get back down. Whew, what a task this is. Now, will I be able to see there's a hole up here? Yes. And the best way to cover that up is probably by using these anti-blocks up here. So yeah, I should have plenty of these requested. There we go. And so what I need to do is basically just build up a little pillar up top here, and that will kind of make it less obvious that this exists. I will say this is incredibly hard to build. I can't see a thing. Don't worry, it's not the camera. I literally can't see anything. Holy smokes. So now with the giant sphere wrapped around the base, the theme is really starting to come together. But today, outside of building the giant sphere around the base, well, we have still the Altamont Star to technically work on. And I will say, we almost have everything required in order to complete it, which is honestly kind of mind-blowing considering all of the things that it actually requires. So jumping back into this, if we actually take a look at some of the other things that we are going to technically need that require a little bit of progression, we should be able to get those completed today. One of those being Forcecraft. And to get started with Forcecraft, we simply need to make a force rod and then combine it with a book. And this is going to get us an upgrade tome. And after we have the tome made, we then need to combine our rod with an enchanting table to get a force infuser. Isn't the quest sound such a beautiful sound? Now we've unlocked Forcecraft. Now, there is an entire guide now to Forcecraft, which honestly is going to make the entire progression of Forcecraft incredibly easy. Now, you can follow along inside of the guidebook itself, but if you follow along with this quest, it's going to tell you every little thing that you're going to need in order to complete. And you just kind of have to follow the progression, crafting the things it asks you to craft until we get up to, for example, tier 4, which is what we need in order to craft the star. And when I say book, I mean the Force and you. This is going to be your ultimate guide into technically getting through this mod. And so long as you follow along with the progression on each tier, for example, tier 0 infusions, and you craft the things it asks you to craft, you are going to be able to get through this quite easily. So, for example, we need to open up our infuser and we need to place our upgrade tome in the top left. And we also need to give this power. Now, there is a generator from the mod itself that will utilize force, but for right now, we just need this. And we also need some force gems. This will get converted into force liquid, and this is how we're going to perform our crafts. And there is no jumping ahead in this. You have to follow the progression as it is listed in the book. For example, it says right here, this infusion does the following. On a force sword, it adds 1 level of sharpness. So we can take a claw, for example, and craft a force sword, and we can go ahead and infuse it. And it's going to want you to do this. Now, you're also going to need some force saplings, and the way you get that is by converting a sapling over. And we are going to need a few of these planks initially, and so that is just to simply make the wood. So chopping this tree down is definitely going to be a must. And believe it or not, one of the first things you actually get is a force axe that gives you the ability to chop entire trees down, which is not too bad. And so early on, I definitely recommend crafting up several of these force sticks, as we're going to need to make a ton of different tools from this mod as we infuse them as we go. So to demonstrate how this is going to work, we place our sword in the middle and we place the thing we want to infuse into it in the slot following the book's guide, and we hit start infusion. And that has been done. And what you'll notice is it says right here, tier 1 of 2 force points added onto the next tier. So it does recognize that you have followed the guide. It's kind of a way of forcing you to go through here. Now notice it says we can use a force nugget in order to upgrade this. Now, we won't be able to upgrade this sword, and this is where I said we're going to be making a lot of different tools. So I'm going to make another sword, and I'm going to add the nugget, which is the other thing that it suggested. And you see now tier 0 with the microwave sounds. We have tier 0 now, 2 of 2. And then notice it says force points 50, next tier 46. So we technically have done all of the operations that are needed, 2 of 2, but we still need to continue doing operations. So if I was to craft another sword and I add nuggets to these, we should see that that force point level go up. So if I do another infusion, there it goes. Now our force points went to 75. So yes, you're going to have to continue to do crafts in this manner in order to bring that up. And once we're there, we're now at tier 1. So this is going to be how the whole thing sort of rolls as we continue through this mod. And as much as you love it or hate it, it's going to be required because we have to get all the way up to tier 4 in order to make a heat core. Now, the cool part about all of this is there's actually some really nice things. You can see that adds sharpness, this adds knockback, and it's a way of applying enchants onto different materials and weapons that can do different things. And you can even get Silk Touch pretty early on with this method. And notice, like I said, there's the heat, there's the lumberjack, and there's the speed. Yes, this is new materials that we're then going to apply onto some sort of tool. For example, this says force tools. So a pickaxe, for example, it will get a smelting ability. You can see right here. So yeah, attempting to smelt anything, the block drops. And that's pretty cool. We also have a speed, and there's that lumberjack I was talking about. So you can apply that onto an axe and you'll be able to chop the entire tree down. And by the way, to get the golden power source, it's simply using a Forcecraft log and smelting it. And so you see right here what I'm doing, the way I'm working through this is every item that it shows in this chapter list, just go ahead and bring it into your inventory, and you're going to want to use this on each of your individual tools. For example, it tells you can put it on a force bow. When we do this, this now goes 1 of 3. Notice there's 3 different items, and that's how the tier progression continues on. And so after doing a few infusions, I'm now at tier 2, which has 9 requirements. And so now we start to see all of the individual things that it starts to talk about, including force pack upgrades, which are a bit suspicious. Now into the next tier, which is our tier 2, we're going to have to start working on enchanting related stuff. Now I did use this early on, but if you are suffering and don't have enchanted bottles, you can take enchanted books with a force rod, and you can actually, depending on the level, get enchanted bottles or bottles of enchanting from that, which is very, very useful. By the way, another way that you can get a ton of enchanted books is you can make this bad boy right here, which is a marine fisher. You just got to make sure that there's some empty water space around and above it, and it will generate a ton of enchanted books for you in this process. And so we need to take this book with an enchanted bottle, and this is going to craft a very interesting item as well, an experience tome, which allows us to store by right-clicking experience into this tome. And in this chapter, we're going to be making upgrade cores and showing how we can apparently use those upgrade cores. And to be able to get our upgrade cores in the first place, we have to have some experience and combine it with our rod. So let's get a little bit of experience here by right-clicking. And we should be able to combine this, and we can end up getting quite a few of these upgrade cores that way. And just like all of our previous tiers, we can start to follow the guide and what it tells us to do. For example, this will make it an experience core, and there's 2 of 9. It also tells us to make a snow cookie, which is the snowball, and we can combine that with a bow, like it says. Just continuing on, there we go. Now we've got 3 done. We can also add a snow cookie to our core as well, and this will give us a freezing core. Some other interesting things, for example, we can put dye on shears, and whenever we shear things with the rainbow that's on here, it will randomly color the wool that comes from the sheep. With all little flint on there, we can also get a grinding core, and if we craft a cookie with a piece of paper, we can get ourselves a fortune cookie. And whenever we do consume this, we end up getting ourselves a fortune, which you can apply on a tool to get luck. And of course, luck equals looting in this case, and I'm almost positive probably fortune when it comes to regular tools. Yep, that's exactly what it says. Fortune on an item. That would be an easy way to get some fortune right off the bat. Now, another thing we need to make in this tier is the sus pack, and so we should be able to put this thing together, and there's also an upgrade for it, and we just need to infuse it. The base pack is only, I believe, 8 slots, so we can actually increase that by infusing it just like this, and now we get a total of 16. And last but not least, we need to make a sugar core, well, a speed core, and there we go. And that is everything in order to get to tier 3. Now for this next tier, we are going to need a couple of potions. So we need invisibility potions in order to start to progress. And we can see all of those individual things, like we are going to need a cobweb, and we're also going to need another force pack. So this section seems like it's going to be pretty straightforward. For example, we need to use an invisibility potion with this. Now, somebody said that this might be easily fixed by taking 2 of our rods, combining them together, and then I should be able to apply that on here. So if you're experiencing this issue, you can just go ahead and craft the 2 rods together, and then that will allow you to apply camo onto your force rod, which I have no idea what that actually does. Now I know on armor, it'll make the armor invisible, but I have no idea what the actual rod does, as it doesn't explain it here. Unless maybe it means you can right click on an entity and make them invisible. That would actually be kind of cool. Or you can right click and it makes yourself invisible. I'm completely invisible right now, and all I did was right click. So yes, it does apply the effect to you. I guess the more you know. And as far as the other things that we need to do, we simply need to apply bleeding to a sword. And that's pretty straightforward. There we go. And yet another level up on our force pack, giving you 24 slots. And to get silk touch, we can apply cobweb onto a force pick, and in this particular level, you will gain silk touch. And that's a pretty simple way of getting it. And look at there. We've now leveled up to tier 4, which is all we really need to make a heat core. But that is just for one of the components, as to be able to actually make a mob, aka the piglich, we're going to need to go all the way up to at least a treasure core, which is the max tier here. and the treasure core requires another star. And the piglet actually is required inside of our all the mod star. So technically I was wrong in the fact that we actually need to go to tier 4 because we really need to go all the way up to the max tier, which is 7. But hear me out, it's not that bad. It's honestly just doing this same process that we've just been working on. And it doesn't get technically harder. I think the hardest chapter had to have been probably tier 2. Like I said, this tier is probably one of the easier ones. This is the heat core that is actually going to be required. There we go. And then we also need to upgrade our force pack yet again to go from 24 to 32 slots. Very nice. And a simple spider eye on here to give herself Bane. And it did not actually complete, it looks like. Oh no, we did. And we've already moved up to tier 5. And this heat core, by the way, is, believe it or not, one of the things that we need in order to make the Philosopher's Fuel. So now we can take a force rod. Remember, combine them together if you're experiencing any issues. This will give us a rod that can apply healing. And then we can also put a feather onto a sword to give us wings, which is a way to dash around, which is pretty darn cool. Yeah, that's a pretty neat little feature. This one, like I said, will heal you if you needed healing. And finally, yet again in this tier, another force pack upgrade, and that brings us up to tier 6. So like I said, it's not too hard. I think the tier 2 is probably one of the hardest parts. Now, inside of chapter 6 is probably one of the most powerful things that you can actually craft from within Forcecraft itself, and that is the force torch upgrade into a time torch. So this one is probably one of the craziest, as the time torch can accelerate blocks. Yeah, just like you can do with your time in the bottle, except this just accelerates them much quicker. Like it'll just do it actively in the world, which is just kind of absurd. And you can definitely stack these and add more of them. It's very, very crazy. And you can see right here, this has to be enabled, which I believe is enabled. But yes, this is pretty ridiculous. One way for us to easily visualize this with just one torch is to watch the crafting process time that's happening here. It's pretty slow. 21, 22. But if I put this on the wall, it's significantly faster. So, and that's just with one torch. Okay, so these things, definitely don't let them swing past you because it can accelerate blocks. And honestly, probably pretty broken and probably disabled on most servers. Because anything that can accelerate anything in Minecraft, everyone will abuse it. And I mean everyone. And now you may be wondering, can it actually accelerate the phytogenic insulators? And notice how fast this is actually processing. Just by placing it on the outside here, yes, it does accelerate. And yes, they do stack. Yeah, I honestly, that's probably the most broken thing, and definitely makes the Phytos even more powerful if you can handle the power and input speed. Of course, I say broken, but it's absolutely fun. It's really fun to do things like this, for sure. Also, it will even work for things like this. So we should be able to see how quickly these time torches can actually accelerate these. Oh my goodness. Mana pool is just almost instantly refilling. It will speed up the actual processing and also the mana spreader time. Just anything that can be ticked with the time in the bottle, these time torches should work on. So even though that is pretty darn cool, next thing we can do is we can combine a force rod with an ender pearl, and this will give us ender, which should allow us to shift right click to set a coordinate and then right click to teleport to that location. Another just like really nice utility. I know this mod is like a super small little thing that you can do, but man, it just has a lot of utility built into it. And last but not least, in the tier 6 is going to be unbreaking. So yes, we can apply obsidian to get levels of unbreaking. Now, I guess technically we don't have to be up to level 7 in order to make treasure cores, because it's just a crafting recipe, right, to make treasure cores. But I guess we might as well finish this off since we're already here. So I'll take a force rod, and our last two things is to apply a light to this. And I believe this affects us with glowing, which is kind of interesting. And also if you apply it to a bow, it'll also give those mobs hit with glowing. And then if we apply this to a sword, the treasure, this is also another interesting thing. It will actually drop cards. And there we go. So that is the tier 7, and we've now mastered Forcecraft. Pretty darn interesting, this whole progression and tier sort of thing. There's a lot of other utilities in here. The Baconator is like a way to auto eat. We can also pick up mobs inside of these force flasks, which are kind of neat. You can even compress down a wither into a bottle. I don't know if it's enabled, but if you right click a wither, I think it puts it into a bottle, and then you could literally place it somewhere else. Yeah, that's kind of scary, honestly. And apparently the way you get this is by taking an inert core and it's setting it on fire and then right clicking the fire with the force rod. There you go, portable wither. And some other interesting things you can do in this mod, and one of my favorites is you can shear pigs for bacon, but it doesn't actually kill the pig, which I absolutely love, and I can actually eat, well, pork, and it puts them in a sweater. Honestly, it's quite disturbing. Same thing can be done with a cow, and you can get leather without actually killing the cow. It's a thing, okay? I'm not doing anything wrong here, I promise. And by the way, to show you how these force flasks work, you shift right click with the jar, and it throws the jar at it like it's a Pokeball, and then that allows you to pick up the mob. Pretty darn cool. And so guys, I think that is it for today's episode, and I hope you guys did enjoy and learn something new, whether that was about the time torches, something within Forcecraft itself, or about the anti-blocks and how to build with the RF Tools Builder. I hope you guys did enjoy, and if you did, click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video a huge thumbs up. And well, with that, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to Bailey. Thank you so much for your amazing support by choosing to support me over on the Discord, by becoming a Discord premium member, and supporting in one of the best ways possible. Also gaining access to today's world download, and I do appreciate you guys. Of course, I will see you in the next one. If you are a supporter, like I said, be sure to get that world download, all of it linked on the Discord. So I'll see you guys in the next one, and as always, thanks for watching. Bye!